Okay, we are live and recording. So, welcome to tonight's webinar, which is entitled Working with Problem Acapellas, and is a preview of my Art of the Remix course on Warp Academy. So, a couple quick things, just some housekeeping stuff before we get started here. First off, this session will be recorded, so everybody who has registered on warpacademy.com will be able to review this session along with downloading the project file that I'm going to create at the end of this session. So you'll be able to go back through and see what I've done and be able to reference it and whatnot. Thing two, if you have any questions and want to interact, that is more than welcome. That's actually encouraged, because a lot of the time people ask questions that other people either are wanting to ask but maybe are feeling a bit shy about, or perhaps ask questions where it might not have occurred to you to ask it, but it will cross your mind as something where you really want to know the answer as soon as you hear it. So that's definitely something that I suggest. If you have something that you want to ask me, by all means, throw your hand up in the air. And you can do that using the little hand icon in the GoToWebinar control panel. So I will field as many questions as I can tonight. I've actually devoted a fair hunk of time to answering questions. We're going to go for ideally the full 2 hours. And I will be taking questions hopefully via voice. So make sure you have a mic connected. But if you do not have a mic connected and you still want to ask a question, you can feel free to type it in to me, and I will do my best to monitor that section of the control panel. And if you ask something, I will, I'll try and hit it. So just before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Art of the Remix quickly. This has been a course that I've run a few times. This particular kind of webinar tonight is actually kind of, I wouldn't say culled from the course, because I tend to do this course live, and I'm doing this live tonight, is unscripted, obviously. And one of the things I like about that is that you get to see me kind of fumble around and make mistakes a little bit. Now that might sound kind of weird, but it's actually something that's really empowering for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people tend to watch finished educational videos and think, oh my God, my stuff doesn't sound like this, or I'm not able to do this quickly. And you don't see the flaws in the creative process that the person doing the instruction might actually have. So I like doing this course live. And most of the students who have taken it have hit me up and said, actually what was really valuable was seeing you work through problems. So that is essentially what this is. So it's a course that starts next week, not this Wednesday, but the Wednesday after. And I will be remixing a tune by Split Loop, and I'm going to be doing it live in front of you guys. Anybody who wants to sign up for it. It's a 5-week, 5-session, 3-hour, so 15-hour total course, where we dissect the remix parts, we build a track around them, and then go through all of the sound design that pertains to making a track, reference the original, and then finally polish it all up. And during that entire point, or that entire period, we also talk about making bootlegs, doing mashups, how to best do kind of interesting and new style bootlegs of existing tunes and things like that. So it's a very, very, very valuable course. And one of the things that we've actually looked at doing this time around is we have introduced all of the previous sessions. So if you sign up for Art of the Remix now, you actually get access to all of the previous runs of the course. So it's an extra kind of 35 hours or more of content, along with all of the samples, all of the video, all of the everything that is involved in that. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel. I definitely suggest that you guys check out the course. There's a lot to it. As I said, starts February 4th. And there is, there's a ton of stuff. I will be doing one remix live, and then you get access to all of the previous runs of the course as well. So excellent. Just quickly before we get started here, I have a question from Philip Toe asking if this is working, and I'm trying to figure out what. Philip, I don't know if you can hear me right now. I'm just going to delete your question here. If you can hear me, feel free to type in again and let me know that. If not, I don't quite know what to do there. Because if you can't hear me, I can't really give you instruction. Okay. Rick says he can hear me just fine, and so on. Okay, cool. So, acapellas. Very, 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 very useful. Obviously, one of the kind of key elements in doing remixes, bootlegs, creating interesting hooks, resampling, etc., etc. It's getting your hands on good acapellas is one of the kind of, I don't know, key kind of arrows in your quiver as a music producer, especially if you want to do like interesting live performances and prepare your own versions of certain tracks for those live performances. Now, there's a couple kind of downsides to working with a lot of the acapellas that most of us can get our hands on. Steve Glenn says he's not receiving audio from me yet. Steve, I'm not sure what to say because obviously you won't be able to hear me. If other people aren't receiving audio, well, anybody who is receiving audio, please message in. I'm just going to message Steve here and make sure he's got it set up correctly. Give me one quick second. Oh, I think Steve's rebooting. Okay, good. So this is a fairly isolated error. I'm getting a lot of people messaging and saying they can hear me, so that is excellent. Where was I? Okay, acapellas. So I'd like to make a couple quick distinctions here. When I say acapellas, I'm really talking about finished vocals from other tunes that are taken in their entirety and which you have access to as a file. So acapellas in my mind are distinct from samples, from a sample CD or the like, and also distinct from recorded vocals, as in vocals that you had recorded specifically for your tune. Now, these are, I think, pretty important distinctions. First of all, an acapella is recorded for somebody else's tune. Now, that means that it's probably been EQ'd in a certain way, it's at a certain tempo, it's structured a certain way, the chorus occurs at a certain point. It's got its own swing and its own feel, et cetera, et cetera. And so getting it to work with your track is actually going to be potentially problematic because it's effectively part of an existing piece of art, and you're taking it and trying to slap it or attach it to something that you're working on, or perhaps it's another tune where you want to do a mashup of it. So it's a question of compromise. It's a question of making the acapella fit with your tune and your tune fit with the acapella. And so there's going to be a few techniques that I'm going to talk about when it pertains to that. Samples are usually a little bit easier to work with because often they will either be designed to just be droppable, like you can just put it in your tune and go. And usually the EQing on a lot of samples on sample CDs is designed to be fairly flat. So it's not something where it existed in another tune and perhaps somebody had cut the bass in the sample out because they wanted to have it fit with everything else that was going on. It'll usually be a fairly raw piece of audio that you can sculpt how you want. And obviously the third one, a piece of audio that is recorded specifically for your track. Well, that should sound good. And if it doesn't, well, that is on you, my friend. But that is not what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the first two, samples and acapellas, and mostly about acapellas. So one of the things that I've done here, just to go through this project that's in front of me, I've imported a tune of mine, which is I finished up actually about 3 years ago or something like that, but never released. I wasn't particularly happy with how it ended up because it felt like it was missing a hook. But it's going to serve the purpose tonight very, very well. So it's called Acid Tool, and it goes like this. In the beginning. So it's a good tune, but it never really had enough for me to be super, super happy with it. So I'm just going to use it tonight as kind of a scrub track, and we're gonna work with it. And then I also have the acapella from a tune of mine called This Will Make You Jump, which features MC Chickaboo. She's a world-renowned vocalist, wonderful lady, and extremely good at what she does. So this is an acapella from a tune off of my second album, which has kind of like a glitchy, bizarro electro house kind of feel. And I want to use an acapella that I had access to, in which I had the rights to give away to you guys, so that you could play around with it, as opposed to, using a Public Enemy tune or something like that, which is always my instinct because I love Public Enemy. So this is an acapella that is dropped in, and which Live has gone and decided is 82 BPM, fictitious. It is not 82 BPM, and added a ton of warp points too. So this is oftentimes where a lot of people immediately get caught up, is the idea that this is what you have to work with. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to leave a copy of the acapella as Live kind of thought it would be at the bottom here. And then I'm going to go back up to the top, and this is just going to be for you guys to see what we're starting with. I'm going to go back up to the top, go and drop the start point right at the beginning of this this sample. Set 1-1 here, and then go warp from here straight. So that is going to remove all of the warp points, which means that Live is not going to be doing anything at all in terms of time stretching to this vocal, except for bouncing it up or down according to the tempo here. So let's have a quick listen to this vocal sample. Okay, so I can tell you straight up that is ridiculously off. I know the tune very well. I actually know the BPM of this tune, and it is not 81 BPM. It's actually maybe I don't know the BPM. I think it's 128. But that's going to be one of the first hurdles that we're going to come to with this, is what is the actual tempo of the track. Now, when you need to figure that out, there's a few different ways to go about it. The first one that I'm going to tell you guys, and this is going to sound ridiculously obvious, and it's especially easy to do if you're doing a bootleg of an existing tune that's available commercially. Google it. I'm completely serious. If you have an acapella that's causing you problems, and it happens to be from a relatively popular tune or something where it exists out there, perhaps on Beatport or something like that, you're going to be able to find the actual BPM of the track very, very, very easily. Alternative 2 is get a copy of the track without the acapella and actually drop it into Live and figure out what the BPM is of the original within Live, and then apply that to the acapella. So those two are kind of fixes for that problem that exist completely outside of Live, really. They're ones where all you need to do to get that right is kind of just check the internet or work with the original file. If you don't have access to the original file, or if the acapella was not recorded to a piece of music, or potentially if the piece of music was done using a live drummer, it's a little bit different. A lot of the time with acapellas and figuring out BPM, or with tunes and figuring out BPMs, you can be pretty sure that there's a couple kind of like hot numbers that things are going to hit. In general, most modern electronic music is sequenced, obviously, and is sequenced in a program where somebody is going to pick a BPM and stick with it. So, hot BPMs are 120, 128, 130, 140, 172, and then down to like 72, 80, 92, 105, 114, etc. These are all kind of predictable BPMs. And so you can be pretty sure that if you've got like, a relatively grindy house tune, it's going to be probably 120, 125, or 128 BPM. That's just simply how it goes. So if you find that you're trying to warp something and you feel like it's going to be around 128, my suggestion is to start with 128 and then go from there. But we're also going to look at a couple other options here. So I'm going to leave this vocal effectively soloed here. And I know that it's going fast, but let's go and adjust the actual BPM here. So that's going to be closer to what we want, but let's take warping off and actually listen from here. I'm just going to bring this forward. Okay, cool. So here we can hear the vocal unwarped, which means it's just playing the original file. Live is not adjusting the tempo of this at all. And what this is going to do is allow us to tap tempo. Tapping tempo is a very quick way of getting live to adjust its tempo approximately to the tempo of whatever you're listening to. So I'm just going to play this, and I'm going to tap tempo until I find something that feels about right. So and what do you know? It's sitting at around 128. I've kind of gone up and down between around 127.5 to 128, up a little bit, down a little bit, but it's looking like 128 is going to be the number. That is going to be correct as far as I remember, because the original was written at that tempo. So let's just go and plug 128 in, and what do you know? It looks like it's lining up. So you can see at the start of bar 9, bar 13, bar 17, bar 41, you can see these hard starts to the vocals. Now, that is a very good sign. So we're going to go and just duplicate that. I'm just going to change the color on this. And every time that we do something with the vocal, I'm going to try and remember to kind of move things forward a little bit here. That way we can play with the next one. So let's quickly listen. Okay, cool. So that's working now. Now you can kind of remember the methodology here as being live, guess the tempo, and slap down a whole bunch of warp points. I then removed the warp points. The tempo was still ridiculously off. So at that point, I took warping off and listened to the original sample and tapped the tempo. There's going to be points where we're tapping the tempo and hearing the tempo that you're hitting along with the acapella is going to be easier if you actually turn the metronome on. Remember to do that at points. It can get a little bit annoying. And then once you start getting it approximately right, there's a method that I like to use where we can actually start in not session view here, but in the arrange window. So what I'm going to do is quickly copy. Oh, I've already done that. Acid tool over to here. I'm going to get rid of this vocal sample here. I'm going to copy this over, and I'm going to paste it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pretend that this is actually not lining up correctly. And what I'm going to kind of do to show you guys how to get around this is work with the start points of the sample. So I'm going to shorten this acapella up, and we're going to actually take this and set it off a little bit, and this will serve for the purpose of our demonstration here. So if we have a look at this particular sample, it's not hitting on beat the way I want it to, but as we move this start point back and forth, we can adjust the start point of the sample within the arrange window. So if you find that you have a vocal where you have a hard start to it like this, as in there's no waveform, and then you have a vocal starting, a lot of the time your instinct will be to drop that in on bar 1, bar 9, bar 17, or something like that, and hope that that's going to be how the sample fits. There are going to be points, however, where when you drop that sample in and you put it on bar 1 or 9 or 17 or something of the like, the vocal is going to be off, even though it's a hard start. And that's because a lot of the time, vocals actually don't start on bar. They will start on the offbeat or perhaps the offbeat of the previous bar or something of the like. And so my suggestion to get around that is to do this, to drop the sample in and then adjust the start point until it feels right. So if I didn't actually know how this track sounded and what this track was like, I would look at starting the tune up and having the vocal sample playing. And looking around until I can eventually find the right point for this to begin. So I happen to know that this is on beat here. But if this was not the case and it was not on beat, by adjusting in the actual clip itself, the start point, we are able to move the sample back and forth incrementally. And obviously you can get very, very finely in there and work with it in a very kind of minute way. Once I've found the start point that I want, I'll actually shorten that sample up. If I don't shorten the sample up, that can be completely fine. But if it's a full acapella for a full tune, what I generally like to do is grab the part that I think is going to be easiest, perhaps the chorus where I recognize how it's supposed to sound when it is on beat, and I will find the start point using that and then expand the clip to the left so that I get absolutely everything that I want to work with. So at that point, you're able to use an obvious segment of the tune, perhaps even looping it so that you can hear the repetition, and adjust the start point within the clip, and then expand the clip so that the entire clip is now playable within your arrange window. At that point, take it, copy it, and bounce it back over. So just going to stop here, and if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to raise your hand up. This is there's a couple kind of things I've touched on here so far where I think that we can expand on it a little bit. And we're going to have a look at starting to EQ and add warping and things like that. But if anybody has any questions about quick warping or finding BPM or how I did that kind of adjustment within the arrange window, feel free to throw your hand up now. I'm not seeing any hands going up, which is totally cool. Don't be shy though. All right, cool. So we will move on here. So now we've got this clip dropped in how we want it here. And let's just go and shorten this up. And now activating the loop brace kind of screwed it up a little bit, but let's go and set it up so that we're doing a fairly large loop here. And we'll do a 16 bar loop. And I'm going to go and adjust this a little bit so that we're ideally hearing just a beat really. Okay, no, never mind. Let's just leave this where it is and we'll work with this fairly minimal beat here. I'm going to loop this segment and we'll do a 16 bar loop again. Turn that loop on and start playing. Okay, cool. So that's a decent start on this, and we've got the acapella in there. It's matching up to the original, or to the piece of music that I'm working with here, and it's doing it in a good way. But I also know that this was created in a tune that had a decent amount of swing to it, whereas this Acid Tool tune is almost completely straight beat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at matching the grooves a little bit. I'm going to extract a groove from Acid Tool here and apply it to this vocal sample. So let me just copy this back over. Get rid of that. I didn't really do anything to it. I'm going to change the color on this because we're going to be doing some warping here or some groove adjustment. And extracting a clip or extracting a groove from an entire track is actually kind of convoluted in terms of timing. It kind of live looks through the entire track looking for the groove. So a lot of the time it's actually a lot easier to crop the clip. So what I'm going to do here, I've got a loop ready to go. And I'm just going to crop the sample. And let me actually bring that start point in, sorry. So now we have one bar, and it's very much a straight beat, but I'm going to go and extract the groove here. So Live is going to go through and look for essentially the intricate timing that is built into this particular loop. And now that I've got that as part of my groove pool, and I'm going to be able to go and apply it over here. So I'm going to go to the groove pool, go Myagi Acid Tool 1, and I can actually adjust the timing amounts, the amount that groove is being applied to this vocal. So let's bring that down to 0, and we'll just have a listen to the original. This is QQQ. This is QQQ. This is QQQ. This is QQQ. This is make QQQ. This is make QQQ. This is make QQQ. This is. Okay, so we're doing some minor adjustments here to the overall timing of that vocal. Now that I've got the timing on there and I've chosen my groove, I'll commit, and we'll see some small adjustments here. A lot of warp markers are getting added, and we are able to see that we now have a warped clip that is going to match the feel of the original, or of the tune that I'm actually working with here. So let's flip back over to the arrange window and get rid of that over here. Pop back and copy this over. And that is our new vocal clip here. So this is effectively taking the timing from Acid Tool and applying it to the vocal from This Will Make You Jump. Now, why this is useful is that there's going to be certain points in time where, as I said, you're going to have a vocal or a piece where the timing of it and the timing of another piece don't necessarily coincide. And so you're going to have to compromise a little bit and find a way to get the two to kind of meet in the middle. So you might not want to apply 100% of the timing. You might want to apply a smaller amount and then go from there. But by going and doing this, by setting it up so that you have a groove overall that you can apply to the various parts that you're working with and adding to your track, you're pretty much setting yourself up for success when it comes to the overall cohesive feel of the tune that you're writing. So at this point, if I really wanted to, I could go and consolidate the time to a new scene, which, when we hop back over here, now has both the Acid Tool clip and the vocal clip arranged so that I can play them perfectly. Let's get rid of the Acid Tool clip. But that effectively imprints all of these warpers onto this piece of audio. So this is now warped according to the groove pool. And that means that this is, the warp points no longer exist in terms of an adjustable entity. They are now hard coded into this brand new sample here on this clip. So, questions, comments, queries? Anybody curious about anything happening so far? Please feel free to throw your hands up in the air. And Clayton. Clayton Borowski, can you hear me? Clayton, I can hear a little bit of background noise there, and I saw your hand up. Clayton's asking what genre I would call this track. The original is breaks. I'd call it new school breaks or acid breaks. And the vocal is actually from a kind of glitchy electro house tune, both of which are originals by me. But I figured this was kind of a Spartan enough track that it would work well with the vocal and kind of, sound quite good. So we've covered certain aspects of warping. If anybody has, warping is a very big topic, and it's something where I don't want to necessarily go further into it tonight, other than to show you those quick tricks that I use to get a sample to fit. In particular, probably the most important one being to not be afraid to go over to the arrange window and adjust your start point. That is an extremely helpful way of dealing with problematic samples where they don't start on bar, because it can be kind of counterintuitive trying to get those things to work. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to cover on warping. The next thing that I want to talk about is actually audio clarity. A lot of the time when you get a sample or an acapella to work with, it's not necessarily going to be the best quality audio. Now, I'm not going to suggest that you guys ever would go online and go to a site with a name like acapellasforyou.co.uk, or anything like that. I would never suggest that you guys do that, because that would be wrong. But if you do that, you will get access to an absolute crap ton of acapellas. Now, that can be great because that's that's a huge amount of recognizable audio content that you can use for mashups and throw into your sets and blah blah blah. The downside is a lot of the time the audio quality is going to be absolute crap. What you're going to get your hands on is probably originally sourced from vinyl, and then recorded off of a turntable with a dirty needle, and then dumped into a crappy wave editor through a crappy sound card, and then transcoded into an MP3 with 64-bit encoding, which somebody would have upsampled to 256-bit to make it look better, and then downsampled again to 128 because they got worried about their file size because their site isn't making money. So if you end up in that position where you have absolutely crap audio that sounds like you're listening through a fish tank, there's a couple different ways that you can breathe a little bit of life back into it. Can you clean up that audio signal and make it sound right, make it sound like the original? Make it sound like the vocalist is in the studio with you? Hell no, that is not happening. But what you can do is breathe a little bit of life into it. And so there's a couple different kind of techniques and tools within Live that I actually suggest digging up whenever you have vocals that are extremely problematic. The first one that I would suggest doing is immediate EQing. And what we're going to do there is a little bit of a kind of truncation of the signal, just a tiny bit off the top and off the bottom. And if you have any low end hum, or if you encounter any low end distortion within your sample, immediately try and quash it. And obviously put this into oversampling mode, which you do by right clicking. And that just makes the EQ a little bit more processor intense, but its signal response is better. The next thing that I would suggest doing is adding a little bit of warmth to the signal. Now, I know this is an MP3 that we're talking about, hypothetically, in this fictitious situation where you're a horrible person and you decided that you really had to throw, I don't know, Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby over top of something. And so this is a very, very low quality signal that we're working with. I actually would suggest adding a little bit of drive. Now, one of the reasons why I suggest adding drive is because you're adjusting the entire waveform within Live's environment at that point. You're adding distortion to everything. Now, you're going to add distortion to the artifacts of the signal. So if you have a horrible, nasty vocal on the way in, it's going to, distort the tail end kind of weird noises that come with bad MP3 encoding as well. But what you're going to do is you're going to add new harmonic content to the high end and the mid in particular of the vocal sample that you're working with. So immediately I add a little bit of drive if I'm working with a crap signal. And I'm not shy about that because I figure that it's better to have something that's going to sound livelier and slightly distorted than something that's going to sound slightly clearer, but also filled with just a crap ton of digital artifacts, which you can't get rid of. So you're basically choosing, or at least I'm choosing in this case, to take the signal and push it a little bit so that I gain harmonic content, even if it's going to mean that the vocal is going to be a little bit distorted. And I'm doing that as a way of kind of bringing the signal back to life a tiny bit. The next thing that we're going to look at doing is adding a gate. And this is where potentially we can get rid of some of the digital distortion that might exist. Now, a gate, for those of you who have taken anything with me before, you will know is one of my favorite devices. I absolutely love using gates. I like sidechaining the gates. I like taking a rhythm and putting it through a gate as a sidechain input and using that on a lead. And I also like using gates in their traditional sense, which is designed to get rid of a signal once a volume level has been surpassed or dipped below. So as the vocal is passing in, we can actually adjust our gate so that only at a certain volume of the vocal passing through it will the gate allow the signal through. So it's sort of like a compressor in that sense. But it allows us to have no signal if the vocal isn't quite loud enough. So any word that is being spoken or said, etc., will pass through in this case once we've adjusted it. But whenever the vocal stops sounding, the gate is going to slam shut and kill the volume. And what that does is it gets rid of tail end signal. So if you have digital artifacts coming from a bad MP3 or something of the like, this is going to be your friend to help get rid of some of the tail end kind of background noise sibilance that you can hear. I always think that MP3 distortion or digital distortion sounds a little bit like running water or like something out of one of the Terminator movies, like a weird metallic kind of liquid. It's I actually don't hate the sound. I think it's kind of cool, but it's definitely not something that you want, on everything all the time. So I'm just going to adjust the gate quickly. And actually, let's loop this up here. Let's do a 1-bar loop, and I'll use this low filtered part as an example. I'm going to adjust the gate so that all we're going to hear is the this, and then everything else is going to die. Okay. So at this point, what we can hear is the gate allowing the this through and then killing everything else afterwards. So this is now loud enough to open the gate up, but everything else is quiet enough that the gate itself is not going to allow the signal through. So that is one of the tools that I tend to use when I'm trying to clean up an audio signal. And you'll notice that I've got the floor down to infinite dB. And what that means is how much the gate is reducing things. So if I leave the floor at 0, you can hear the gate isn't doing anything. If I bring the floor down to a negative infinite amount, it's going to just completely crush the signal 100%. One of the other things I like doing in order to give a vocal a little bit more life within a new project is, and this might sound very weird because I'm talking about trying to clean up a signal, but I actually use reduction. Now, that is not cleaning up a signal, but what it does do is it gives, again, a little bit of extra harmonic content, especially when you add it as a bypass, or sorry, as a wet dry within an audio effect rack. So I'm just going to bit reduce this signal a little bit, and we're going to look to get a little bit of extra harmonic content here. Okay, so again, this happens to be a high quality waveform that we're working with. If it wasn't, what you'd start noticing by this point is the fact that the vocal no longer sounds limp and sterilized and horribly digitally demolished. It now starts taking on a little bit more of a characteristic within the live environment. So this is definitely kind of an advantageous approach, something that I do a lot, and which I highly encourage you guys to do. So add small amounts of distortion, add a little bit of gating, a little bit of saturation, a little bit potentially a bit reduction, and EQing. and we at that point have something that's probably worth putting through a little bit of mild compression. So we're just going to look here to bring everything kind of in line. Oh. Okay, cool. So we're starting to get a vocal that fits a little bit more within this track and sounds a little bit ballsier, sounds a little bit less anemic and flat and so on. It's a series of techniques that I definitely suggest that you guys utilize. Vocals a lot of the time will sound canned straight out of the water or straight out of the gate. I don't mean the noise gate. I mean, straight out the gate isn't the saying straight out the gate. And so as a result, you need to kind of pump a little bit into them using, in particular, that kind of series of effects and so on. And the net result will be something that sounds a little bit livelier and a little bit better within your tune. So let's have a look now. Does anybody have any questions about that at all? About kind of any of the effects that I'm using or so on? I'm just flipping back and forth between the GoToWebinar interface and live itself. And that's, so I'm kind of popping over and doing a quick check to see if anybody has their hand up or giving you guys an opportune time to do it. And no, so cool. I'm going to flip back over to live here and we're going to keep on going. So the next segment that I want to talk about is something I call doubling down. And this is, the idea here is going to be that you have a single vocal track to work with. And you want it to sound bigger and more full and more kind of interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop back over to the arrange window here, and we're going to take this vocal track in its entirety and we're going to duplicate it. And what I'm going to do is drop the track volume completely here. And we're going to basically switch our draw mode so that we're not doing fades, but we're using the pencil tool. And we're going to start the vocal playing. And basically, anytime that I see or hear a word or something where I decide that I want to actually have it emphasized, I'm going to bring the volume up on this second track. So let's actually shorten this up because that first little bit is really filtered. And you know what? Let's actually do this with a different segment of the track.
Self now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the...
Yeah. I'm going to eliminate, let me just go back and I'm going to start doing this over, actually. I'm going to copy this segment over into the arrange window. Drop it in, go back to the view here, and I'm just going to shorten this up. And we're going to go and play with the full vocal here.
Whoa, whoa, this will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear I want to touch on.
So let's hear that with the beat quickly.
Get yourself now ready. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding a dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding.
This is going to be way better to work with. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate the vocal track. And as I said, I'm going to drop the volume on this vocal segment, the second one. Let me just add a new color to this so that we can see the difference. I can call this vocal backup. And I'm going to switch draw modes again, and we're going to have a listen to the vocal, and any of the words that I want to emphasize, I'm going to bring the volume back up on it.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you
Let's go for let's go.
get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo.
So it's looking like we're going to want to have probably most of the tail ends of the bars emphasized here. Yeah, probably. It's looking like that, isn't it? So let's go ahead and just do that and assume that that's what we're going to want. And effectively, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be doing something that's very similar to what rap vocalists do in the studio when they record a second track of kind of backup elements. So I'm going to take everything that we've got here. I'm just going to, actually I won't freeze. It's going to take too long. I'm just going to start adding some effects after this segment here. Let's start with a frequency shifter, and we'll go 100% wet, and we'll drop the frequency a bit here.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Bingo. Too much. Too tough. Bass rush.
And let's go and just quickly do some quick fades here. All of these are ending a little bit abruptly, so all I'm going to do is just drag that out, this volume curve, a little bit, and that should improve it.
Let's go. Bass so. Bingo. Dingo. Too much. Too touch. Bass rush. Jump. Let's go.
Okay, cool. I'm going to leave the frequency shifter somewhere around negative. I'll go for, let's try negative 480 here.
Too much. Too touch.
And let's go and throw this into an audio effect rack. And duplicate this chain, and then go positive 80 on the other side. And then we'll go 50% right, 50%, or sorry, 50 left, 50 right, effectively throwing these now mildly adjusted frequency shifted elements into hard left and right in the stereo spectrum. So we now have effectively a little backup vocal track that is going to only use select words and not be there all the time, but when it is, it's going to be detuned off of the original using the frequency shifter and then panned hard left and right to give it some stereo spread.
Let's go. Of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up, cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much.
Now that actually, I'm getting an interesting artifact there. This is something that I've encountered before, and I'm going to try and remember these numbers here. But basically, let's just play the vocal along with the two frequency shifted elements here.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up, cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump.
Cool, crazy. Let's go and add an amp to this as well. And we'll switch it onto dual output, and let's just go and use that to add some extra crunch to this.
Hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up, cause I want to touch. All over.
And we can also drop the volume of this a little bit, and we can go in, and if we want to, we can transpose this entire clip down a couple semitones just to get a little bit of extra kind of depth to it.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up, cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord.
Cool. So we're using this to back up the original, and what we're getting from it is a little bit of extra kind of presence on certain words. Now, there's other ways of achieving this as well. If I turn off the frequency shifter, we might get actually a little bit of a cleaner kind of signal here just by dropping the transpose on the original clip by a couple semitones.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump.
Cool. Next up, I'm going to add some reverb specifically to this backup signal.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go.
And I'm just encountering a problem there because I've automated the volume on the overall output here. So what I'm going to do is let's just go and let me think on how to best do this. Actually, no, let's just split this clip. Nope. So now we have a separate clip here. And I'm going to freeze that track. So at that point, we're building the volume automation into the... oh, actually, no, I don't want to freeze that entire track because I've got all these other clips going on with it. Okay, well, a different route to do this is... I'm going to copy this envelope. I haven't actually done this before, but let's see if it works. Cool. So I just went and copied the envelope from the mixer over to the gain on the utility. And what I'm going to do here is clear this envelope. So now utility should be doing the job of the automation that I had put into the overall mixer. And let's make sure of that.
Get yourself now ready and get yourself now ready and let's go. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the...
Cool. That's working. And let's just go and reduce the overall volume a bit because that's a little bit shrill.
Ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call it...
So now I can add that reverb and it's not going to be getting ducked out of the way because of the volume being dropped.
Ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's...
Cool. So that's working quite nicely. I'm going to go and I'm going to group the vocals into one vocal track here. And we're going to have a look at working with some dynamics in just a sec. And I'm going to go and flip over to some questions here. So let's begin a bit of a discussion. Somebody feel free to throw their hands up. Colorman Music asked if I could make the effects chain available for download. Yeah, everything that I'm doing here is going to be available for download afterwards. But just to make it a little bit easier, why don't I go and throw all that into an audio effect rack here. There we go. So that's now ready to rock and roll. Okay, questions, comments, queries, anybody? J.R. Thomas, can you hear me?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Great. I have a question. How do you handle when you're doing a remix and you have a very good clean acapella and you do things like melodyne and auto-tune, how do you handle that?
Oh, in terms of pitch adjustment, and like getting it to work in key with your tune.
Yes.
In general, I prefer if I'm working with a vocal that has a lot going on in terms of pitch, that really counts. I mean, everything has a pitch, but if you use like a hip hop vocal, it really a lot of the time doesn't matter what the key of your track is that you're working with, right?
Yep.
If you're working with something where the key really does matter, I prefer writing to the key of the sample, and adjusting accordingly. Either that or only using parts of the sample that will work with my tune. Because every time you do any kind of major transposition, and adjustment of pitch within the acapella or within the sample that you're working with, you're going to start adding artifacts to it, and you're going to start kind of degrading the sample slightly. So my preference is to take a piece of music that I'm working with and either make sure that the pitch of the original doesn't count, or if it does count, if it's a particularly melodic vocal, I write to the key of that sample.
Okay.
That's my preference. Everything else is really just slapping a band-aid on. Like you can throw it into Melodyne and start adjusting single notes and making sure that if there's a B flat and B flat doesn't fit with the key of your tune, but C does, you adjust every B flat in the sample so that it's C. But you start getting a lot of artifacts at that point, and it becomes pretty obvious what you're doing. And also a lot of the time, if you're using a vocal that has a recognizable melodic structure to it, you probably want to keep that intact, because that's going to be, if you're doing a bootleg, something that people are going to adhere to and latch onto, and you don't want to screw with that. If you took a Lord tune and started adjusting the vocal in that so that it carried a different pitch so it matched your original, then as soon as people heard that sample come in, or that acapella come in, they'd be able to tell that it wasn't right. Something was off with it, because it wouldn't follow the same melodic structure, right?
Yeah. I just kind of ran into some things where it sounded like the original track may have been like an avant-garde type of scale, where maybe it was like like some of the Arabic scales, or like a gypsy minor, and it was just like a few notes that was just kind of out of where I was at. So I was just curious how you normally would handle that.
Oh, that's totally cool. I mean, like if you're talking like a few notes here and there, there's a lot of different ways around it. One of the easiest ways of going about that type of adjustment would be, let's say that we find that this one particular element is out of tune right within a certain point. Let's say that the end of bar 30 here starts falling out of line. Clip automation can actually work quite well. So we can go to transposition automation and do a very tiny adjustment of, in this case, one semitone, and we should be able to get even finer than that.
Wow.
And go up and down for just that one segment, just a tiny, tiny, tiny tweak.
Okay. I never thought about getting that deep into the envelope editing. That's actually that's exactly what I was looking for. Another way than having to struggle through Melodyne, because I don't find it very user friendly.
No, it's not. I mean, you don't want to necessarily have to fire up a whole other user interface specifically so that you can adjust the tuning of something, right? Like, it's a pain in the ass.
Yes.
The other thing that you can look at doing is, let's say that it's a very, very fine adjustment and it's only on one particular section. You can take an individual element here, like this, which I just separated off, and consolidate it to a new sample. Okay, so what I've done is I've sliced part of this entire acapella out of the original acapella and created a new piece of source file out of it, a new piece of audio material. And at that point, I can do some very fine tuning with the detune function here.
Okay.
And that applies across that entire little segment there. So I can tweak that out as I choose to.
Great. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, excellent. Sweet. Any other questions tonight? JR, do you have any other questions?
No, actually, I'm just enjoying the session here and just learning a lot. And just the little fine things that, it's the detail work that you're doing that's like very, very interesting.
Oh, thanks, man. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to flip back to it then. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to throw your hand up or type it in if you choose to. Brendan Quibbin says, got to run. Thanks for the webinar. I will keep peeled for the recording. Brendan, awesome. Good to see your name again, man. Brendan has been on a good number of classes and webinars in the past. That's something that I actually always like, is kind of seeing people a few times and talking with them as they progress through growing their abilities. So, Owen Ferguson, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can perfectly.
All right, I was just gonna see if you can maybe explain kind of like I guess, I mean, I know you can get the acapellas like off the internet, but when you release a track with them like on SoundCloud or something, like what's your responsibility to like the original artist for that acapella? Like, are you only responsible like for compensating them if like you try to sell it, or if you just like release it as a free download, are you okay? Or
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. The it depends on what the original record label kind of contract or copyright states. A lot of the time when people release acapellas, now they will say something about how it can't be used for commercial gain. Now that basically means if you want to release it for free, it's probably okay. But ironically enough, it's probably not okay for SoundCloud to have it up there, because they're making money off of advertising and off of people paying for it. And so if they have material up there that's infringing upon somebody's copyright, then they are actually the ones who are going to be in copyright violation, not necessarily you, the bootlegger. And that's because SoundCloud has, it has advertising, it has people paying for its service. So if you release something that's going to be a free download, they're probably not going to, really want it up there if they know about it, because it puts them in violation. The other case usually is actually a little bit harsher, and that's that any kind of use of a piece of copywritten material in a piece of music is going to infringe upon somebody else's copyright, and it's going to put you in legal violation. Now, does anything ever happen about this? Not really. If you're looking at giving away a free piece of music that utilizes somebody else's material, so long as you don't call it a new original of yours, you're probably not really going to get in too much trouble. Now, don't take this as, legal advice, because that's not something I can tell you. But what I can say is, from my own personal experience, I've done a ton of bootlegs. I've never tried to make money off of them. Well, I tried to make money off of one back in like 2002 when I pressed it up to vinyl, and it did okay. But that wasn't the point of doing it. It was just for fun. If you're doing it for that reason, I think most of the time a lot of record labels will see that and not go after you for it, assuming that you're not trying to make coin off of it. If they choose to, there's a couple routes that they can take. One of which I've actually seen happen a lot, is an amazing best case scenario, which probably worked out better for the person doing the bootleg remix than they ever could have imagined. And that's that the label snapped it up and said, holy crap, we like this. We're going to put this out as an official remix. That doesn't really happen so much anymore, just because there are so many new producers nowadays that record labels could never really track down absolutely everything and give it a good listen. But back in the day, that was actually something that would happen. Somebody would put out something, they'd be in breach of copyright, and the record label, instead of suing them, would say, oh crap, well, this is great, let's put it out. The other thing that can happen is digital identification can force you to do a takedown. So let's say you do a bootleg of, a Macklemore track or something like that, and you've got the acapella, you throw it on yours. There's going to be digital services that go around and effectively take signal imprints from pieces of music and try and match them against hundreds of millions of existing copywritten pieces of music. And if they find that what you've done is a match with something that exists elsewhere, you'll receive a takedown notification that will basically be a fairly empty threat, but you still have to follow it, and it'll ask you to remove the file, the tune from YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever it is. And if you don't do it, you can actually end up in breach, and whatever site it is might disable your account. But those are kind of the scenarios. Likelihood of being sued, very, very, very low, especially if you're giving it away for free.
Okay, yeah, because it just seemed like just a big gray area. So, and I mean, I see them, you see them posted all the time. So I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were on it. So,
well, that's a pretty in-depth answer. The fact of the matter is they are posted all the time. There's almost nothing that record labels can do about it nowadays, except to try and stem the tide of people bootlegging their material. But there's also labels that have taken bootlegs as being one of the sincerest forms of flattery, and allow them to exist. I've certainly got some material out there that's available for free downloads, where the labels are aware of it and they're actually happy about it, because I think it's caused more people to buy the original tunes as well. So it depends on what their particular perspective is. But yeah, it's hairy ground. You do need to be aware of the legal ramifications, and that's why I say, like, I would never encourage anybody to go and do the things that I do all the time. But it's, yeah, I won't say go do it, but everybody does it, and you tend to not really have have the book thrown at you too much at this point in time. Just don't try and don't take a tune and jack the vocal from it and add it to your tune and then release it commercially, because at that point you're going to be in a very, very bright line violation of copyright.
okay, yep, yeah, thanks for that.
Yep, for sure, man. All right. So I've got no other hands up at the moment. If anybody does want to throw their hand up, feel free. But I'm going to flip back through and start showing you a couple interesting kind of routing tricks and EQing tricks. So for those of you who have been in class with me before, you will probably remember my perhaps unhealthy obsession with my multiband dynamics frequency splitter rack. It's actually not an unhealthy obsession. It's an extremely healthy obsession because it's extremely useful. I'm going to go and drop this rack in. This is the multiband splitter, and I'll do a very, very quick walkthrough. Apologies for those who have heard it before, of what this is and why it is important. Multiband splitting is an extremely powerful way of getting certain signals to be divided into different frequency ranges, which can then be controlled and affected in different ways. So when I first tried building a rack like this, I tried doing it with EQs. And so what I was doing was adding a whole bunch of EQ8s and trying to get them to look after certain ranges. So let's do a simple version of this here. What I was attempting to do was split a signal. So in this case, what I've got is, let's go duplicate. I've got two EQ8s, and I'm going to do a high pass on this and a low pass on 8 here. And let's go and adjust the frequency so that they're approximately right. Go and map to macro 1. Let's go and map that to macro 1. Okay, so as we adjust this up and down, you can see that what we're getting is an opening and closing of effectively a high pass and a low pass filter. Now, the downside is when we have a look at this, you can just see, just from me flipping back and forth through the EQs, that there's obviously going to be a little bit of a spike here, or a dip, where the two EQs do not quite overlap. And we can't really compensate for that with the Q value or the resonance value. And we also can't really offset one of them. I can't go and range restrict this so that it's offset against the other EQ. So that dip in volume is going to just be there. Extremely, extremely annoying. Not what I was after. So let's go and delete that. That is my example. Instead, what we have is the multiband splitter. So it's 3 different instances of Ableton Live's multiband dynamics, with each instance soloed in one band. So in this one, the low is soloed. In this one, the mid is soloed. And in this one, the high is soloed. And that's literally almost all this rack is doing, is taking the incoming signal and dividing it into high, mid, and low. And with this, there is no overlap. It is a very, very hard cut on the filter. So the actual frequencies that pass through each one are controlled by these knobs. Mid-high crossover, anything above this knob in terms of value goes through this band. Everything below it and above the low-mid crossover goes through the mid band. And everything below the low-mid crossover goes through the low band. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, the frequency of low is adjusting, and the frequency of mid gets adjusted according to these 2 knobs as well. So at this point set here, we have a very, very tiny mid-range, and we can open it up by adjusting the knobs accordingly. So very, very, very useful. Even though the multiband dynamics here are not doing anything else. They're just allowing us to create effect chains on certain bands after the fact. Now, I've also taken the multiband splitter here, and I've applied it to ascend, return. Now, why have I done this? Am I crazy? Yes, possibly, but this is actually an extremely useful thing. What I'm going to do is I'm taking the original track, this completed piece of music that has its own feel and has its own kind of presence and sound and EQing, and I'm going to send it 100% to this send return loop. Now, this send return loop is set so that the volume is off. So we're not going to hear this send or this return track at all. All that's happening here is the acid tool tune is going to this return track and then going through a multiband splitter. Now, the multiband splitter allows us to pick up sidechain inputs. So anything that's coming through any of these bands is now going to be something we can pick up as a signal to drive other sidechains. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to flip back to the vocals, and you're going to start to see this all take shape here. I'm going to compress each of the bands differently. I'm going to take a compressor and apply it to the high band, and I'm going to take a compressor and add it to the mid band. And I'm going to forget about the low band for now because it's really not going to impact us too much. I don't think there's much happening in the low band of the vocal. But I'm going to take the mid band here. I'm going to take a sidechain input, and I'm going to take it from the return track multiband splitter, and I'm going to take it from the mid post mixer. Then I'm going to do the same for high, sidechain input on, multiband splitter, and then from high post mixer. So what I just did was create a situation where this tune is sending an output to this track, which is then intelligently dividing the signal down into information defined by these knobs, so mid and high and low. And now I have 2 compressors over here that are picking up the signal that is passing through that multiband splitter on the return track and allowing me to compress certain parts of the vocal track in its entirety according to what the volume is of those ranges on the original. So as the mid triggers the compressor, as the mid-range of this tune triggers the compressor within this rack, I can adjust the mid-range on the vocal accordingly. Now, why that's helpful is sometimes tracks are going to be, or acapellas, or any element actually, is going to be annoyingly shrill or present in certain ranges where you need clarity in other departments. So I might have too much mid in this vocal at certain points in time. So what I'm going to do here is have a quick look, and we're going to compress the vocal very, very slightly so that as there is more mid-range presence in this tune, I get less mid-range presence out of the vocal. So
put your hands up cause I want to touch all over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ting ting a dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch all over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ting ting a dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up.
So as you can see here, that's being triggered by this multiband dynamics splitter here. So everything above 120 hertz and between 120 hertz and let's just set it to 2000, just for the sake of demonstration here. This band is looking after everything between approximately 120 and 2000. As soon as information passes through that band, it's being sent over to the mid compressor on this multiband splitter, which is ducking the vocal a little bit out of the way so that we have a bit more clarity.
Put your hands up cause I want to touch all over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you
Cool. So that's a fairly advanced technique, but it's extremely useful. It's something that I suggest actually using in a lot of different aspects of your production. In particular, using the multiband dynamics on lead elements. There's going to be points where you can isolate certain conflicting elements from your drums. For example, if you have a snare drum that is super, super big and has a lot of crispness, but crosses over with your lead in a very certain frequency range and doesn't jive, doesn't work well, you can set up that exact same loop so that every time the snare drum sounds, you are able to have it duck the lead out of the way. And you can do that quite nicely and quite easily using send and returns. Now, the reason why I used a send and return on that as opposed to just putting the output or putting that multiband dynamics directly on the output of that audio channel is that even though there is absolutely zero kind of noise to it, I prefer not using this multiband dynamics on a finished track that we're going to hear, mainly because I do have a utility added to the low band that's designed to bring the low everything in the low band into a mono signal. So I just did that out of kind of economic curiosity, I guess. That's the other advantage to something like this is when you set it up as a send return like that, you can bus multiple things to it. So let's say that we had that this acid tool track was not actually a full track, but was really just a kick and snare. And then we had another ancillary percussion element. We could bus all of those to that send return and use that as information to drive sidechain compression on other channels. So it's a very useful technique for being able to get multiple things to control the dynamics of other things without having to use a ton of different instances of any multiband compression. Okay, so I'm just going to flip back and go into question mode here. Lucien Darthard said, my internet was down, just came up. Can I download or watch what I missed? Yep, I'm recording this, and it's going to be encoded and posted up to warpacademy.com so that you guys can review it. So yeah, don't stress on it. Anybody else? Any questions at the moment? There's a good number of people here tonight, and I can't believe that I am getting as few questions as I am. Please, guys, come on, don't be shy. Owen Ferguson.
Hey there, I was just gonna see if maybe you could maybe show us if there's any good way to extract vocals from like a full existing track. If you can't get the acapella for it.
The Holy Grail. Yeah, so there's a lot of tutorials that you can watch on this online. I personally would never try and do it, really. If I do try and do it, I do it using things that I've kind of thrown in a couple times already here. I try and do it using gating and using EQing. but there are people who will say that if you take, like the left channel and right channel and invert the phase and bring them down the middle, et cetera, you can make an instrumental, or you can make an acapella or something of the like. The downside with that is, when we talked about digital distortion and the fact that it's hard to work with, if you want to hear some digital distortion, try hearing one of those acapellas that is a DIY acapella. In general, those things are almost unusable. Extracting vocals from something is extremely hard, to the point where I would say it's almost impossible. Because even though the human voice is very identifiable within a waveform, when you're talking about one overall file that's a completed file and is, that's it, you have a voice that's probably going to cross into so many different frequencies that there's going to be almost no way of extracting it without extracting other information that still contains noise from the other elements of that tune. So it's kind of, it's a very hard way, or a very long way of saying, no, I don't. There are people who will say that you can do it. And my answer to that is like, yeah, but the results are so bad that why try?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've gathered. So I was just gonna check and see if there'd been any new developments in that area.
Not really. I mean, the one thing that I can say is, and it's not something I've tried, but if you can find an instrumental version of the track, so, and this is not an uncommon thing, to have an instrumental along with a vocal version, but not have somebody release the a cappella. If you can find the exact same track in an instrumental version with literally everything the same about the waveform, by putting the waveform and inverting the phase on it against the original, you might be able to get something out of there. So you're taking two tracks identical, except for the fact that one of them has a vocal in it, and offsetting them against each other to cancel out all of the sonic information contained within the instrumental version. You will get something out. It's going to sound, it's still going to have artifacts to it. It's still going to sound like you're, listening as a fish underwater to somebody singing in the distance. That's just, unfortunately, the way that science pans out on this. It's a very, very tough thing to do.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks for that.
For sure. That is why I, as I said, I prefer my combination of EQing and gating. You're not extracting the vocal at that point, but you're getting something you can work with that sounds more natural than any of the results of vocal extraction. So, yeah. All right. So, thanks for that, Owen, by the way. Good question, and definitely something that people ask about all the time. It's for sure a pretty hot topic. So, what do I have next on my hit list here? I've got a few more things I really want to go through tonight. And after that, if people don't have questions, we may call it an evening. But this should take us most of the way through to the end here. So my last point that I really wanted to chat about was glitching, making new choruses, resampling, and making it yours. So that's obviously a fairly long segment to chat on. And basically what that was, from my point of view, was I wanted to show you some kind of creative techniques for taking an existing vocal and really kind of screwing around with it in a way that's that makes it your sample as opposed to part of the original. So let's have a listen to this particular element here, this doubled up vocal track.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself.
Okay. So I like the result of that. I do have some sidechain compression set up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert an audio track and I'm going to resample. I'm going to go and grab an input, not from the external in. I don't want that. But I do want it from vocals. And I'm going to do it post mixer. Set it up to record here. I'm just going to drop the volume because it's going to be obnoxious as hell. And let's go and record this loop.
Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready.
Okay. So let's have a listen here.
Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself now ready and lingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump. Get yourself.
Okay, so I've now resampled that. And this vocal element is, I'm just going to rename, well, sorry for yelling at you guys there with all caps. That's now called resample. And let's go and call it resample within the clip. And then I'm going to right click and go crop sample so that we have something nice and clean to work with. But that is everything that we've done up until now, basically patched over and bounced down to one complete audio snippet. So there's a few different ways in which we can really kind of screw around with things here. One of my favorites is actually slicing up the sample, not within arranged or session view, but within arranged view. And that's something that is a bit of a throwback for me. It's a throwback to a point in time where I was working with an Akai MPC 2000. And what I really particularly like doing with audio was cutting it up into very, very small segments and putting them on pads and jamming them. Now, that was one of my favorite things to do, but oddly enough, I hit a point where I actually preferred doing it visually. Even though it was nice to do it with pads and it was a lot of fun to actually physically play something, I discovered that I preferred looking at a visual waveform and building hooks out of that. So what we're going to do here is take this resample track. I'm going to set this actually, I'm going to set this off to the side for a sec. And let's just have a listen. We're going to bring in one part of it.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, so call your number just like in bingo. Get with this one, ding ding ga dingo. Lord have mercy, this one is too much. Put your hands up cause I want to touch. All over you, feel the bass rush. This will make you jump.
Okay, let's go for this feel the bass rush bit here. I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it back. And as you can see, I've set it up so that, actually, let's go and make it one bar. We only have one bar to work with here. So let's have a listen to this single bar.
All over you, feel the bass rush. All over you, feel the bass rush. All over you, feel the bass rush. The bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush.
Okay.
Bass rush.
So we've got that word bass in there. I'm just going to consolidate that. So that's now a new single audio sample. And I'm going to go and add a volume curve to it. And ideally get rid of most of the word rush so that we just have bass.
Bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush. Bass rush.
And let's go and start making this into a kind of vocal hit here. I'm just going to build a simple pattern out of this. Duplicate it and offset it. Duplicate it again.
Bass, 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 bass,
Okay, let's grab another little segment here. Just going to randomly copy a bit over. And I'm not going to go for perfection. I'm just going to demonstrate the technique. But we're grabbing little slices. Let's go and actually duplicate that and do a very rapid repeat So I'm going to get right in there, and we're actually going to look for the loudest part of the waveform, which looks like it's about there in that little segment. Duplicate it 4 times. And sorry, let's zoom back out. Okay, so let's take that, select the entire section that we just worked on, and consolidate that. So we're effectively just resampling this over and over. And that gives us access to a few new parameters here now that it is an entire clip. We're going to go to transposition modulation here. I'm just going to add a couple little quick automations. Okay, so we've now resampled this again, and now it's got those transposition modulations basically built into the sample. So cutting up things and chopping them within the arrange window is actually something that is extremely quick, dirty, easy, and fun to do. The results can be pretty impeccable, and I actually love this. Yeah, that's silly fun there. I like that. But let's go and do a very typical kind of trick here. We're going to do the old bounce to audio thing. Split this off. Going to select this and slice to a new MIDI track. Going to do, let's see, built in, and we'll go slice per 8th note, which is old kind of MPC style. And as you can see, we're taking a fairly large hunk of audio here, probably more than I wanted to, but whatever. And we now have it as MIDI information, as in sampler now has it loaded in, or sorry, it's now in a drum rack. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to get rid of this resample element, just disable this track. And let's have a look at what's laid out for us here in terms of MIDI. And we'll look at this 2-bar loop here. Cool. So at that point, we can start looping or duplicating certain elements a few times just to get some variation. I'm again doing this kind of at random, but also knowing that it's probably going to sound pretty cool. If it doesn't, whatever. Cool. So now we can go through and we can take individual pads, like slice 15 here, throw it from simpler into sampler, and do interesting kind of filterings with it and things like that. As we go and adjust the filter curves on individual slices, it'll kind of differentiate them and give us the ability to have them kind of do fun things within within the context of this particular automated loop.
Now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get
yeah, let's go and bounce this into sampler as well. And with this particular sample, we're going to add a little bit of FM. Just do this kind of fairly haphazardly here, just for fun.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. Ready.
Let's go and work with the ready clip too here, just quickly. And just bring the volume up on that a lot. And bring the decay in.
Ready.
And that just gives us a nice little hit on the front end there. Extra little bit of kind of FM style distortion.
Get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass, get yourself now ready and let's go. When you hear the sound of the bass.
So now let's we can actually take a look here at our resampled element and our chopped up element, and we can do a little kind of extra kind of chorus bit here, where what we're going to do is do a call and response between the two tracks that we've just created. So I'm going to take out everything except the little kind of pitch jumps that we were doing here. I'm going to expand that back out a little bit. Yeah. Hop into the MIDI clip and get rid of a couple notes here. And now let's listen to these two things together in context. So we're going to have the resampled loop followed by the chopped up loop with the resampled elements.
Bass. No, bass. No. Get yourself now ready. No. When you hear the sound of the bass. No. Bass. No. Get yourself now ready. No. When you hear the sound of the bass. No. Bass. No. Get yourself now ready. No. When you hear the sound of the bass. No. Bass.
Sweet. I'm actually digging that. Okay, so I just switched back. This is why I try and switch back and forth fairly often between questions and doing some instruction. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of typed out questions here and a couple hands up. So I'm going to start off. Rick Walden said, "That's what I want. I get it. The shit's on the right side." Rick, I love you. Rick liked the side chaining thing. Lucian says, "Maybe because your explanations are so clear." Thanks, man. Santo Cervano says, "If you can get a vocalist to sing a copyrighted song, can you use the one you recorded without infringement?" Not really. What you can do is end up paying for a publishing fee, which allows you to do a cover version of a track. And that's a very different situation from having to pay to use an already recorded piece of music, because at that point you get into dealing with something called mechanicals, which have to do with the publishing and duplication of certain materials. It's a big kind of kettle of fish, but essentially what I would say is, if you can get somebody to record a certain piece, you're still going to need to clear the sample if you want to, or clear the piece of music if you want to use it. But if you're not using something that's already been recorded and published by somebody else, you're in a much better position to be able to do a cover and have it be an easy process. At that point, I don't know if you even necessarily need to get approval to do it. You can just notify that you are doing it. And and register the material, you're not going to register the publishing necessarily on the material, or not 100% of it, but it'll put you in an advantageous position. You're not using an original piece of music that's been recorded. You're covering something. So very different scenario. Tim says, got to run. Looking forward to finishing the rest when it gets posted. Yeah, absolutely. London says, why not cut the rush portion off completely? We're talking about that's going back to that segment that I was where I was chopping off bass rush. I didn't want to cut it off entirely because I felt like there's a fade out there that's actually better served. And sometimes it sounds a little bit more natural to have a vocal trail off very slightly, as opposed to having it be a hard cut. If you do a hard cut, yeah, you're getting just what you want, but there's also going to be perhaps a little bit of sibilance or enunciation or morphing of the voice into the next word that you will lose if you go and really just chop it out in its entirety. So sometimes doing the subtle approach of doing a fade out actually works a little bit better if you're trying to retain a natural sound to the audio. Yeah, that's something I've done a lot over the years. Not hard chops, but actually doing fairly fluid morphing so that something gets a chance to really kind of finish what it's doing. Lucian says, I like that. I've been using Sugar Bytes Looperator to get similar effects. Yeah, chopping up within the arrange window is awesome. It's great. And resampling it once you've chopped it is great because you can resample the resample and then resample that. So that's obviously a very fun route to go through. And Steve Glenn says, yeah, that's cool. And Steve, I don't know what that refers to, but I'm going to assume you're talking about absolutely everything. Because I think I've seen you around. I think I remember you being a fairly optimistic guy. So, Steve, thank you for saying that is cool, whatever that was. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to cover tonight. We've taken an acapella from live not knowing what the hell to do with it through to doing some quick warping and making sure that it fit within the track that we were working on. A couple things I touched on there, in particular, the idea of using the arrange window and adjusting the start point of the sample or the acapella visually. That's again extremely important and allows you to take a problem acapella and get it to fit with your track, especially once you know the BPM, which we found in a myriad of ways, not least of which Google. But more importantly, the tap tempo function with the metronome that allows you to really pin down the speed very, very quickly. Adjusting the start point allows you to have it fit with your track very, very quickly. Bouncing it, once you've done that, bouncing it back over to session view as a clip gives you the ability to start jamming with it. And once you've done that, going back and using those multiband dynamics devices and audio racks to get the acapella to really sit with your track, extremely important. And then going through resampling, chopping it up, and using that to give you fodder to create new elements out of an original signal, which become more your own and allow you to, really get in there and create something that works with your track. One of my favorite things to do is to use an acapella in its entirety, and then make myself a new chorus out of that acapella. And that's kind of what what we started hinting at with this here. We're changing the rhythm, we're changing the words that jump out, we're grabbing the segments we want to use and drawing attention to them, and then being really creative with how they pop out of the speakers. So that's I hope you guys learned a bunch tonight. As I said at the beginning, this is kind of a preview of Art of the Remix, which is a course that I do live. Lots of interaction with people on that course. It's been a hell of a lot of fun to teach, and there hasn't been a single time where I haven't ended up at the other end with a completed remix. So people who have joined me on that course, I've got to see the entire thing from start to finish. I start working with the parts. We talk about parts. We talk about how to approach a remix. how to add your own touch to a tune, how to, produce something great for remix contests, how to do bootlegs, et cetera, how to do digital crate digging, all of these kind of weird lost arts, and then go through and create a track from the ground up using the stems that we have. And I devote a gigantic amount of time to question and answer. So any of the points in time where any of the past students have had any kind of issues that they want to bring up, we hash it out live, and by the end, it ends up being a group of people who have learned not just from me, but I've learned from them, and we've all learned from each other. So it's an extremely fun course. This is the first time where we bundled the run of the course with all of the previous runs. So basically, there's 3 other times where this course has run where you get access to all of the recordings and elements from those times. So if you join this course, which I highly suggest, you will also be able to check out every previous one, which adds up to one hell of a lot of content, more of my voice than I would ever like to hear, but you get access to it pretty much permanently. So it's a lot of knowledge, a lot of it very deep. So a lot of fun. Okay, Owen Ferguson, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, I was just wondering on the drum racks, like I know how to change the parameter for each pad, but like if you have a lot of pads, sometimes I want to change like the release or another parameter for like all the pads I have. Is there a way to do that, just all pads, like one parameter at one time?
Luckily enough, you do have that basically ganged here. When you take a drum rack and create it using Live's built-in kind of templates. So by going convert to MIDI track and standard, and then dividing or using built-in preset and then dividing it according to eighth note, I end up with a tactic sustain release on all of the pads anyway. So that is a very, very useful kind of thing that gets added in.
Okay, and that's just on one of the presets that they have for the slice to MIDI then?
Yep. So you go slice to new MIDI track, slicing preset built in. That will automatically throw everything into a drum rack with those parameters built into it. So let's go and select that. So yep, we have ADSR, then we got start offset, loop length, loop compress, and crossfade snap. These guys down here are fairly fun sound design tools I've found. So let's
Get yourself now ready and
so they can be a lot of fun to play around with.
Okay, if you have like your own drum rack with like your own audio sounds, like sometimes like the choke, like instead of going like one by one and assigning it to one group, like sometimes I just want to assign like 15 or 20 pads to just the one choke group, and I haven't found a way to like do it all at once, really.
Let me think on that. Perhaps if you're doing it with a bunch of different pads, because multi-selecting pads isn't really working. But if you're taking those pads and stacking them, if you put all of those into one, if you put all of the slices or all of the samplers onto one pad, at that point you should be able to multi-select and apply. Let me see. Two chains. No, I'm not off the top of my head. I'm sure there is a way. Off the top of my head, I'm not able to think of it. Apart from simply using an instrument rack and ganging all of the parameters to one. You can obviously go through and do what you're doing, which you say you're finding annoying, which I get. Having to go through and individually take each slice and map something is going to be a pain.
Yeah, because some things like the release, like I'll just want to set the release so it'll play the whole sample for each pad, and then sometimes I just want it to, release when I take my hand off like a key. So
yeah. Owen Ferguson just had a tip, which is the copy to siblings. Dave K said the same thing. So right click on the parameter that you want, And okay, so it's not going to work necessarily within the drum rack, but it will work. It will work if you're doing it within an instrument rack here. So if we take slice 9 and duplicate it and then set a value, we should be able to let me just unmap from release here. There. So I've just unmapped the release on slice 9 here. And by right-clicking on the release value from in one of these instances of sampler, it brings up the copy value to siblings, which sets the same release across all of the samplers within this instrument rack.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yep. I can't remember. I don't think it works in drum racks, but it might. Now, let me see quickly. I'm just going to unmap a couple of these. Okay, yeah, it does. So long as it's not mapped to something else, then yeah, you can effectively add. Yeah, you can create a release value on one pad and then map it to anything else that's not mapped. So let's just do a quick experiment here. I'm going to unmap 2 others. If I go back to slice 13, yeah, so I can copy that value to now 3 of the pads within the drum rack that are not where the release isn't assigned to this release knob.
Okay, so like when it says map to siblings, it'll just do like the whole drum rack as long as they're not mapped on any of the other pads then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sweet. And that's why I said we all learn from each other. That works well. Okay. Thanks for that, Owen. Good question. All right. And yeah, so thanks you guys for attending tonight. Clayton says, damn, will this be available on Warp Academy? It won't be up tonight. It'll be up, I'm assuming, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, the day after, but I'm assuming it'll be up tomorrow. Oh, it says it must be the snowstorm. You are living on the East Coast. I moved from there. I am not missing it. Yeah, I hear that the East Coast is getting hit ridiculously hard at the moment. So good luck with that, Clayton. Yeah, I will have that up and available for download, and we will follow up with everybody, letting you know when it's live. And there will also be a pack set up online with all of the content that I've created tonight using these particular tracks. So everything will be up and will be live. And yeah, definitely check out Art of the Remix. It's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. I love split loop. So I'm actually like super stoked to be doing this remix. It's going to be a really good one. And thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Steve Steve says, thanks for sharing your some tips and sharing your personality. Yeah, I sort of feel like a solo radio host at points when I do these things, but I actually really dig it. It's a lot of fun. So thank you guys, and I hope you have a great week, and I hope that everybody learned something tonight. And yeah, stay happy, stay safe, stay well, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Rick, see you later, man. Hit me up, by the way. Okay, bye.